date is November 7th, 1991. This is the 50th, this year is the 50th anniversary of World War II, Pearl Harbor. This is one of a series of interviews we're doing of veterans of World War II, of people getting their experiences during the war before it's too late. This series was inspired by that show on public television last fall, where the veterans of the Battle of Gettysburg gathered on the 50th anniversary of the battle and told their story. And we are trying to, we found a number of people in Montgomery County who had very interesting experiences during the war, and we're trying to get them to tell their stories just as though they were telling them to their own grandkids. Now, these tapes are going to be the property of the Montgomery County Historical Society. We're going to give one tape to the interviewee, and we're going to put the two copies over in the local history room of the Crawfordsville Public Library, where they can be taken out and referred to in years to come. Our interviewee today is Clint Wilkins. Clint, give us your full name and tell us a little bit about where you were born, where you came from, and so on.
Well, my proper name would be Clint K. Wilkins, and I was born at Linden, on the farm that had been in the family several years. I've spent my lifetime there. And
what was your date of birth?
February the 12th, 1923.
Now your whole family was a farm family, wasn't it?
Correct.
And your dad was a farmer, and your grandfather before you?
Right.
Were they on that farm? Was your grandfather on the farm too?
True.
Okay. When did the family come into Montgomery County? You remember? Or do you know that?
Probably in the 1840s.
And up there in Linden?
Right.
What was the extent of the farm, of your farming operation at that time? I mean, around 1940, 41.
Well, it's the same size as it was, about a little over 600 acres.
And your dad's name was Ward Wilkins, wasn't it?
Correct.
All right. Where'd you go to high school?
Linden.
And when did you graduate from Linden?
1941.
Yeah, all right, then. Were you working? Did you go right to work on the farm after that?
No, I went to University of Notre Dame.
And how long were you there?
I was there until Uncle Sam decided they wanted me.
And when was that?
Well, I enlisted December the 8th, 1942. That was a year and a day after we got into conflict. And I always did want to fly, and that was one of my primary motives in enlisting. I didn't particularly want to be drafted.
Yeah.
And I came down and talked to the local draft board, and they had no objection of my enlistment. However, they said, we will not throw your draft card away. You are still eligible for the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little ironic, but as I say, I was in school, and I got my letter from the Air Corps to report to Fort Hays, Ohio. I had 24 hours to get out of whatever I was doing. And
were you at Notre Dame when you got your
yes,
letter?
I was.
Okay.
And believe it or not, in the same mail, I had my postcard from the Montgomery County Draft Board to report for immediate induction. So I,
which one did you take?
needless to say, I discarded the the local draft notice
Okay.
and took my enlistment
All right. Where did you report?
to Fort Hays, Ohio.
And what sort of a facility was that?
Well, that's an old establishment that goes way back, and the thing I remember, they were all old brick buildings, and the even the streets, were
Paved with brick.
paved with brick, remind you of cobblestones,
Uh-huh.
And there was a great big long troop train, and all of us were crowded into that, and off we went to the Winter Haven Hotel in Miami Beach, Florida, which was right on the ocean, and real good booty. And they tried to teach us our left foot from our right foot, and a little military bearing and so forth. And we were there about 6 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And then the Air Force.
Was that what you call your basic training?
That would be foot basic. We called it foot basic.
Okay. Or did you get what? Anything interesting, anything amusing happened down there at Winter Haven? That was better than some of us had.
Well, true. Well, a local boy from the Wingate, whom I hadn't seen since, high school days, when I was assigned to a room, when I walked into the room, there he sat on a bed.
Who was that?
Well, I'll think of it.
Okay. And, okay, you were there at Winter Haven and Winter Haven Hotel. And what happened after that?
Well, the Air Force had a program they called CTD, which was a college training detachment, which they sent all the cadets to, and those were practically every school in the country had them, I think. And I was sent, luckily, back up to Danville, Kentucky, to Center College.
Oh.
And I got home a couple of weekends,
Uh-huh.
And we had pretty intensive schoolwork session there. Plus, we did get 10 hours of flight time out at the local airport. No one soloed. They didn't solo anybody. And I had a little female instructor that was no older than I. However, she had just graduated from the University of Louisville and was married. And she actually started us on our actual flight training.
Uh-huh. What kind of planes were you flying?
A little tandem Aeronca.
Uh-huh. All right. How long did that part of your training?
About 5 months. That program ran 5 to 6 months.
Did you live there in the dormitories at Center College?
Correct. They moved the females that were there over across town to another little school, and it was an all-boy complement.
Uh-huh. And after the 5 months was up, what happened then?
Well, they trained us down to Nashville, Tennessee for what they call classification. And that was a very extensive, probably the best physical that we ever had, very thorough physical. And then you were classified either bombardier, navigator, or pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did not qualify for any one of the three, why they shipped you out to gunnery school or radio school or mechanic school or something like that.
Did you make the grade
I was classed as a pilot, yes.
as a pilot? When did you get your license to fly solo? Where did that come in?
Well, from Nashville, we were trained down to Montgomery, Alabama at Maxwell Field. And that was 3 more months of what they call pre-flight. And that was intensive schooling and hazing. I mean, you felt lower than the belly of a snake. And I think they just tried to make you quit.
What is all this schooling you're going to in the meantime? Are you taking mathematics? Are you taking Greek or what?
No, math, physics, meteorology, geography, things like that.
Yeah. They don't teach you English or anything of that kind?
No, we did have a history course, believe it or not.
And where did you get the history course? There at Center?
That's right, at Center, and there was a history course at Maxwell Field, pre-flight. Oh, you also had to learn code.
Yeah. The Morse code?
Morse code.
Yeah. Did you ever become proficient at that?
No, 5 words, and that stumped me, but that was enough to pass.
Okay. All right, now we're down, where are we?
Well, all this time, we thought we were going to fly.
Yeah.
And like I say, we'd only been in the air 10 hours. And so when you finish the course at Maxwell, why, that's when they trained you out to what we call a primary school. And I went to a little town, Camden, Arkansas, which was
down there, Paris, Arkansas. No, that is
El Dorado.
El Dorado,
right.
Okay.
And it was a little town about the size of Crawfordsville here, with an airport similar in size, only all grass strip. And that's where we met our instructor and was introduced to the PT-19, which I now have and fly. Open cockpit.
You're finally getting into flying.
Yes.
All right. How long did that part of the training take?
It took about 2.5 months, and you got about 65 to 70 hours of flight time.
Now, were these people that you started with at the beginning, were they following you through, or were they dropping off as time went by?
Well,
the same class go through, or did they go in different directions?
Well, of course, they went in different directions. There were 90 of us that went to primary, the flight primary, and originally. Yeah. And of course, that's where your attrition started. Some made it and some didn't.
Yeah. Okay. It was pretty rigorous physical, I suppose.
Very.
Physically.
Very.
Yeah.
We were hard as rocks.
Okay. All right. Now, you're down there in Arkansas. What kind of a life was that down there?
Oh, the people were wonderful.
Okay.
And that so-called Army base, we only had a skeleton military. In other words, we had a major for a CO, lieutenants as tactical officers and instructors. But our instructors, actual flight instructors, were all civilian personnel.
Yeah. Now, were you a commissioned officer by this?
No, I hadn't made the grade yet.
Okay, all right.
So you finish primary, and then they loaded us up in 6x6 trucks, and we ran up north to Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. And that was called our flight basic training. And you did the very same thing there, only that was totally military. And then if you successfully completed that course, they trucked us over to Blytheville, Arkansas. And that was another 2.5 months. And if you completed that successfully, that's where you got your wings.
Boy, you were trained when you got through.
Pretty well.
And
pretty well.
You made it to Blytheville.
Made it through Blytheville, yeah.
Okay, and
the one kind of interesting thing that I recall now is every post office had a sign out front, that said, "Win your wings,
yeah.
Join the Air Cadets," Well, the colonel shook our right hand and gave us our wings with the left hand, and also there was a little note clipped to it that you signed a statement of charges for 45 cents.
What was that for?
The wings, you bought them.
You bought them.
But the advertising up to then said win, W-I-N, win your wings. But we all paid for them.
45 cents.
45 cents, yeah.
And Did your bars come with the wings? Or?
Right, you got a gold bar.
Uh-huh. As a second Louis.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And you were in the Army Air Corps.
Right.
All right, what happens after that?
Oh, well, from there.
Where are we in time here? You went in December. Where are you now?
In August the following year.
August the following year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
You've been all over the country in the meantime.
yeah. Well, I always wanted single engine.
Uh-huh.
But when the time that our class got there, they were needing bomber boys. So you either went to single engine advanced or twin engine.
Uh-huh.
Well, Blytheville was twin engine. So our whole class graduated in twin engine.
Okay.
So.
Now, what kind of planes were those? What do you call those planes?
Well, they were AT-10s,
Okay.
and there's none left today. There probably isn't over a half. Well, I doubt if there's a half a dozen left in the country.
Uh-huh.
They're just all gone.
Who manufactured those?
Beach, I think.
These.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Where do we go from here?
Well, go down to Harlingen, Texas for 4-engine training. That's where we got in. They put us in a B-24 and tried to teach us to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And if you successfully, well, I might say that while they were trying to teach us to fly the machine, we hauled gunners, and we have maybe 15 gunners, and we'd go out over the ocean and over the inland sea, inland bay there, and all kinds of targets, and so it was kind of a dual purpose deal. And when you completed that, then we went to Salinas, California, and that's where they put the 10-man crew together.
Okay, so you finally got your crew assembled.
We got the crew.
What's the crew consist of?
10 men.
Well, what are they?
Well, you got a pilot and a co-pilot, a nose gunner, a top turret gunner, and armor,
And a belly
navigator,
gunner? A belly gunner?
belly gunner, ball gunner, we called him, an engineer, navigator, bombardier,
What about a radio man?
radio man, and tail gunner.
Mm-hmm. All right, and what, was this an A-10 too, or what?
B-24.
B-24, okay. And that was to be your plane?
Combat aircraft. Yeah.
Okay. And you're out in California. Where do you go from here?
They shipped us out in the god-awful lonely desert there at Tonopah, Nevada.
All right.
And we flew there as a crew for about 6 months.
You flew for 6 months. You go up every day and fly?
Practically every day.
Mm-hmm. Where just to go up for a few hours, do you? Or?
Most of the trips were 6 to 8 hours.
And how many planes were doing this?
Oh, I don't know, probably, they probably had 50 or 60 24s there.
And all of you are flying about 6 hours a day?
Oh yeah, at least.
And that's 7 days a week or 5 days a week?
What you would do, they would fly you pretty hard, and then you would get maybe 3 and sometimes 4 days in a row off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now you're 6 months out there in the desert, then what?
Went back to Salinas and picked up a brand new airplane, B-24. And then we flew a couple of 3 trips out of there, calibrating the carburation on each engine, swinging the compasses for the navigator, checking the machine out.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were satisfied with that, well then we flew up to Sacramento, and up there they put 2 big rubber tanks in the 2 front bomb bays, and they made saddles, plywood saddles, for the 2 rear bomb bays, and any weight that they could take off a B-25, why they threw there, like guns, armor plating, anything in the world that they could strip out of a B-25.
Yeah.
Because it was a long trip from there to Pearl Harbor for a 25.
So, now you're flying on a B-25 now.
No, 24.
B-24.
We just carried those parts.
Oh, I see.
See,
Okay. All right.
we lightened the B-25s up.
All right, I get it. And are we finally going to get out into combat?
We're getting ready to head west.
Are we up into 44 yet? Is it 1944?
Yeah, it's getting the end of 44.
End of 44?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And when do you finally make it into combat?
Well, we flew from Sacramento to Hickam Field.
In Hawaii.
Right. Hickam down to the little island of Canton, which was southwest, over to Chirawa, Los Negros, and delivered the plane to Biak, New Guinea.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hauled us down to Nadzap, New Guinea for a little further training.
Oh.
Jungle, survival in the jungle, and we made some milk run bomb runs to Japanese garrisons that they shot back, but they weren't too good,
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, New Guinea was
that's
it?
New Guinea, yeah.
Mhm.
And then from
They were
there,
pretty well petered out by that
yes,
time.
right. From there, they hauled us up to Mindoro, which was
That's
the
in Philippines.
Philippines. It was the big island south of Luzon, where Manila is located.
Yeah.
And we joined the bomb group there, 380th Bomb Group.
Well, okay, you're finally in a bomb group. And what would you say the date was?
That was just shortly after Christmas.
In 1944.
Right.
Okay. Now, you were the pilot. You had a co-pilot,
Right.
and you remember him at all?
Well, oh yeah, he's dead.
Uh-huh.
There's only 3 that I know of surviving, and there might be 4, but we haven't run him down yet.
Uh-huh. Did you fellows keep track of each other after the war?
We did for quite a while, and then we just kind of slipped off, and now I really only have the armor gunner who fired the Martin upper turret. Lives in Milwaukee, and we get together once in a while.
Yeah. Okay, now tell us something about you're on Mindoro, and what do you do then?
Well, we went over to, made several trips to, to me it was Indochina back then.
Yeah, Thailand and...
Yes,
And that
yeah,
area.
Saigon, around there, coast of China. Several patrols to knock out shipping, which we didn't do a very good job because from altitude they're awful hard to hit.
What, are you getting shot at by now?
Oh yeah, Saigon was a hellhole.
Uh-huh. Tell us about the combat. What happened?
Well, we were fortunate. Whenever possible, we had a PBY that would leave before we did, and our navigator and that PBY always knew the coordinates from the target, see, and they would circle, and if we got in trouble, one of us, you had a good chance that they might pick you up. And a lot of times we had a submarine laying off the coast that, had his radio antenna out of the water, and that was another reassuring fact.
Yeah. Now, the Japanese were pretty well entrenched down there in Indochina, weren't they?
Yeah. About all we had for cover were P-47s, and those boys did a tremendous job.
Yeah, they kept the, were there Japanese planes that
Oh
they
yeah,
were running
yeah,
into?
yeah. But time and time again, they'd turn away. They'd
Yeah.
see what we had with us, and
With your fighter planes,
Right.
escort.
right.
How many fighter planes would go with you?
probably 2 squadrons, which would be 12, 24 as a rule, something like that.
But you were the center of the thing, just the one bomber and 24.
Oh, no, our whole group would go.
How many bombers?
Well, there were 4 squadrons in the group, and each squadron could put up, well, 15 was a compliment, but those weren't always airworthy every day, see? So if we got 10 to 12 times 4, see? So 40 airplanes.
Did your plane get hit?
Very small, very small.
Yeah. Now, what your scene of action was then mainly in Indochina?
Until we moved up to Luzon.
Okay.
And then we worked the coast of China further up. And which we call Formosa, which is Taiwan today. That was a real hotbed for Japanese activity. Not only shipping, but troop transports and whatnot.
You couldn't get low enough though to do much damage to shipping. Is that what you're saying?
That's really because they'd shoot your pants off, you know.
Yeah. Were these merchant vessels that would they have anti-aircraft?
Oh yeah, most all of them had batteries, you know. And you know, out in the open sea, it wasn't too bad. You just contended with them.
Yeah.
But if they were
Close
in a harbor, well, then they had shore batteries. Would support them.
Yeah. Do you you had all these other planes with you? Were you assigned targets before you started out?
The way we generally did it, we what we call pattern bombed. Each airplane had a red and a green light in the tail. And when the green light came on, that told the bombardier and everybody else to get their house in order. And when the red light came on, why, that bombs away. So we dropped in a pattern, see?
Yeah.
Unless, like a ship, then they'd go and trail.
Well, now you're not aiming these bombs at all then?
Not in the pattern, no. We aim, the lead bombardier is the one that's doing the bomb site work.
Yeah.
And we drop on the plane that's ahead of us.
You drop on the plane that's ahead of you. What do you mean by that?
Well, when his red light came on, why, we dropped.
Oh, I see.
See? That just followed back through the formation.
Yeah. Do you think that did it do much destruction?
You know, at the time you couldn't see. We were so high. All we went on were photographs. And we did have good people that would interpolate those photographs.
Yeah.
And
how high were you?
Anywhere from 15 to 18,000 feet, normally.
Oh.
Normally.
That'd be pretty hard to hit a speck on the ocean.
It is. Very difficult.
So that you were really, it came down to pattern bombing. You just kind of had to saturate.
It's kind of like shooting at the ducks with a shotgun. You know, you send up a lot of shot and hope you get one.
Yeah. What about, did you hit any land targets? What about land targets?
Well, we went from Mindoro up on Luzon to an airfield, and like I say, that basically the same targets were hit there. Then from there to Okinawa.
Okay.
And then we went up to Japan 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. You actually hit the mainland hit Japan proper.
Shikoku, which, well, I always called it the southern island. Well, Kyushu, I would guess, would be grammatically correct. But we did all of our work on that one island.
Oh, all of your work. What was your work?
Well, mostly harbors,
hitting
factories.
Again, just kind of, and you're up at 15,000 feet.
Well, we were 18. We were as high as we could get there. They shoot back at you.
Yeah. When you got back to your base after going on one of these runs, how did they have something to tell you what you'd done, what you'd accomplished? Did they?
You know, you had to wait till the film was developed, really.
Yeah. And how long did that take?
Not too long, generally overnight.
And you'd see what you'd accomplished.
Right.
This photography, you had a photographer in your plane, did you?
Each plane had a 16 millimeter movie camera, and they used those, and then they would have a regular photographer. Some in one or two of the planes.
Not every plane had a photographer, though.
No. We took our own pictures, and that was a supplemental, you might say.
No, those were stills, though. Those were just.
No,
you had a
movie.
Movie.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, when you got back to your base, what was life like on the base?
It was nice to get home. Number one.
Yeah. How long would these runs take you?
8-10 hours.
From, for instance, the Philippines, you're flying up to Japan, or
No, we couldn't make it.
Okinawa. Okinawa.
That was about as far as we could get, and you couldn't tool around up there too much.
Yeah. What was the flying range of your plane?
Well, depended entirely on how you were loaded. See, if it was distance-wise, it was fairly short. Then they filled the bomb bays up more. And if fuel was well, it depended entirely how you're grossed out.
What were these? Of course, it's a bomber plane. What kind of bombs were these? Were they all the same?
No.
What?
We never dropped anything larger than 500 pounds, and that ran on down to 100-pound anti-personnel bombs. We dropped incendiary clusters of incendiary bombs. They were packaged, and as soon as they were released, then
spread.
Then the wrapping disintegrated, and they like dropping a bunch of matchsticks.
And in other words, the desire was to start things.
Set fires.
Set fires on the city.
Sure.
Did you see any of that happen?
Oh yeah, you could see a lot of smoke. You know, we could see lots of times a goodly distance. You know, when we were leaving.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, you can see evidence.
Did you see that in Japan?
Oh yeah.
What about going back to Indochina? Did you see the same thing back there?
We didn't use many incendiaries there.
Now, what about the 500-pound bombs? What on earth would you do with a 500-pound bomb?
Mainly a factory or munitions installation or dump or any concentrated target.
How many bombs would be on a plane, for example?
Well, if we had very far to go, 400 or 500-pound bombs, and we were loaded with all the fuel. Right?
Now, were you ever attacked by fighter planes?
Well, yeah. We didn't know exactly which guy they were after, but they got pretty close sometimes.
Did any of the bullets come through your plane?
We had a few. Like I say, we were a real lucky crew. You know, holes in a Band-Aid would patch.
Yeah. When the hole came, was you? Of course, up at that height, you were pressurized.
No.
You weren't?
Oh, no.
At 18,000 feet,
No.
you weren't
We were sucking oxygen and freezing to death.
Oh. What kind of clothing did you have to wear?
Well, we had nice, big, heavy sheepskin lined clothing, and and the boys that rode in the turrets had electric suits that they wore under their normal clothing.
So that those bullets coming through the fuselage wouldn't disturb the pressure.
Didn't bother a thing.
Anybody ever get hit on your?
No, no.
You were really lucky.
Lucky, very lucky.
Okay. All right. I asked you about life back at camp. What was it like back there? Were you? Did they have plenty of entertainment for the
No.
Air Force?
Where we were, there was no entertainment. There was no entertainment. You made your own. It wasn't that normal South Sea Island picture that, you know. That
All right. Did you have any characters in your crew? Any fellows that were different? Any fellows?
Oh yeah. Our navigator especially. He was a little bit older than. He was probably 4 or 5 years older than the rest of us, and I know lots of times. You know, we'd be nothing but water, you know, and you know, we'd ask him, well, Roy, where are we? And so he'd take a great big map and kind of wad it up and come up there, and then he'd spread it out over the cockpit, you know, and he was born on a dairy farm in Cliftonville, Minnesota, and of course he milked all his younger life, and he had the most god-awful hands and fingers you ever saw. And so he'd open one of those big hands up, you know, and let's see, you know. Then he'd say right about there somewhere, and he'd just that hand covered miles and miles and miles, you know. But he knew pretty well where we were.
As a pilot, you were in command of the plane.
Well, so they said.
Yeah. But even this guy had seniority.
Oh yeah, sure did.
But where did you make your? Were you promoted along the line here somewhere?
First lieutenant, yeah.
And did you wind up the war as a first lieutenant?
First lieutenant, yeah.
Okay. All right. Where were you when the war ended?
We were on Okinawa there, and for about 4 days, and we knew something was in the wind, but you didn't know what, because we sat on the ground for about 4 days and briefing every day, see. And the last Japanese carrier afloat was in dry dock in Kobe.
Yeah.
And it had taken a torpedo or something like that. In other words, everything topside was workable. All the guns, you know, and so forth. And they had been briefing us and showing us pictures. And that was our next target. But they were going to drop us down 5,000 feet.
So you were going to get shot.
We'd probably never survive it. And we're going to go in trail, see, one after the other.
Yeah.
And each bombardier would do his lining up and so forth. And, you know, that was in that location.
I didn't realize that, Clint, that was you say that was the last aircraft carrier they had?
I think so. I think so.
Did you know anything about the first atom bomb that they laid on Hiroshima?
No, not until it happened.
You didn't?
Oh no, it was secret.
But did you hear of it right after that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And that was before then this briefing that you were getting on this aircraft carrier. Was that right? Or did Nagasaki come close after that?
Well, about 4 days later.
But so that when you were being briefed on this aircraft carrier, Hiroshima happened. Right around there.
Right. That's the reason I think we stayed on the ground for.
Yeah.
It was a good 4 days, as I recall.
Yeah.
And everyone wondered, you know,
Yeah.
why aren't we going somewhere? Why aren't we flying?
anything in between there that I missed?
No, pretty routine.
All right, you were getting ready to hit that aircraft carrier, and the war was going to be over.
Right. Then they dropped the second bomb.
Yeah.
And then we made one more trip to Japan. And that was to, the intent was to see if we drew fire. We weren't sure they had laid their guns down, so to speak. And we flew all over, part of Honshu and or Kyushu, and the other.
Hokkaido?
No.
We didn't get that far north.
No.
Okay. Did you lay any bombs on them while they were doing
No.
it? Just
No.
scouting?
No, that's right.
Just trying to draw fire?
Right.
And you didn't draw any fire?
Never saw a sign of it. Never saw a sign.
Anywhere along the line, did you ever see a Jap?
No.
Never saw a
No,
single
not
one?
up close.
Not even a...
Well, ones that gave up on Okinawa there, finally, you know, they sifted downward. You know, they had to steal food and stuff like that, stay alive. Yeah, they picked those prisoners up. Yeah. But
that was your only, the only time you ever saw a Japanese. All right, what happened after as the war ended, and what happened to you?
well, I mean, hostilities ceased, and they hauled our prisoners, our boys, nuns, there were nurses, down to Okinawa, and I took 4 loads, and they were all Dutch seamen that had been torpedoed way early in the war.
And they were Japanese prisoners?
Prisoners, right. And then we took them from Okinawa down to Clark Field. And the day the war ended, I lacked 1 point of having enough points to come home. So they transferred me to an LB-30 outfit. And
What does that mean?
that was a stripped down passenger version of the B-24.
Oh.
And I hauled a lot of brass back and forth down to the Philippines and back. Several trips.
What do you mean by brass? You didn't haul General MacArthur?
No, not general. I hauled one general. Yeah, and you know, colonels.
Shuttling back and forth to Japan?
No, to the Philippines.
Philippines. From where?
Okinawa.
Okay. And, okay, then what?
So that kind of subsided. That was probably a month or maybe 2 months, a month and a half, something like that. Then they checked me out in a C-47. And I flew the surrender party down to Miyako.
Now, which surrender party is that?
The people that actually got the 1-star general down there to say I quit and sign the papers over.
You brought them down to the Philippines?
To Miyako. That's an island south of Okinawa.
Okay.
And then also took the same party down to Ishigaki, which is another small island on that chain down to Formosa, Ryukyu.
Now, was this the surrender party that we see the pictures of MacArthur?
Oh, no.
Well, what surrender party was it?
I had no idea. I mean, there were a couple of colonels and their staff. And they had the paperwork, and they spread the papers right out on the flat part of the tail back there. That was the table, and they stood up and signed it up.
Not on the plane?
On the plane. on the plane. Done right out the airfield.
Okay. Now, you're on a B-24 now?
C-47.
C-47.
Right.
Yeah. And what do you do there with that?
Well, as I say, then I made several trips back to those islands, hauling mail and butter and a Jeep and you name it.
Yeah. And when do you finally get out of the service?
Almost the middle of the summer.
That would have been in
46.
46.
Yeah.
What do you do in the meantime? Just fly on these missions on C-47s and...
Well, that plus that work kind of fell through, and they gave me 89 Jap POWs that had been taken prisoner there, I presumed on Okinawa, most of them.
Yeah.
And we built 9 double Quonsets, 20 feet wide and 96 feet long.
What were the purpose of those? For barracks?
Barracks, yeah.
And where was that?
Okinawa.
Okay. And when did you finally get word to go home?
Well, I got home, I was 19 days coming home.
Came home on the ship?
On ship, yeah.
On the Liberty ship?
No, it was an old ship that was taken as reparations from the Germans in World War I and refitted into a hospital ship. And it was a beautiful old ship, clean, spick and span, and hardly any troops on it. It was just actually it was a nice cruise, but awful slow.
That was in the summer of 46. 19 days from sailing from where to where?
Okinawa to Oakland.
Okay. Why don't we pause here? Interesting incidents about the surrender party. Why don't you go ahead with that story?
Well, one of the islands, Miyako-shima, was probably 160 miles south of Okinawa. Someone, I suppose, had to go down and formally surrender the island, and maybe I was fortunate, I don't know, but anyway, I got to fly the so-called brass down there, and on the way, we noticed, or the navigator did, a destroyer that was loaded to the gunnels with people. You couldn't tell, what they were, but some 30 or 40 miles.
Japanese destroyer?
No.
American destroyer?
Oh yeah, U.S. destroyer.
Okay.
Yeah. 30 or 40 miles north of the island. Anyway, we went on in and picked the best strip and landed, and
the strips were pretty well bombed out.
they had been torn up and patched and torn up and patched, yeah.
What was this? Tell us about this island that you were landing on. What about it? It had been bypassed?
It had been bypassed. They just kept neutralized, and there were about 10,000 troops there, and so the commander of the island, he was a one-star general, came out to meet us in I've always said a 1938 four-door black Chevrolet automobile with his aide and his driver,
Japanese.
Right. And 3 6x6s that had probably 10 or 12 fully armed Japanese soldiers standing in the back. And of course, while we didn't know at the time, as soon as we saw that, we began to wonder. But the surrender party was back on that destroyer that hadn't gotten there yet, and the island had not been de-armed yet. And however, we had no problems. They knew the war was over somehow, and were very amenable, and spoke English, and I'm sure they were picked. And this one chap and I finally struck up a conversation, and lo and behold, he was a graduate of Purdue and knew Crawfordsville here and Romney, Indiana. He didn't remember Linden, but I can understand how that could have happened probably. And so our brass signed the papers back on the horizontal stabilizer of the airplane on the tail, made a pretty nice table to work on. And I know I remember he asked the general what they needed the worst, and surprising to me and everyone was soap. And so
You didn't have any soap?
we didn't have any soap aboard that day, no. And then 2 or 3 days later, they sent us down to a little island called Ishigaki, which would be northeast of Formosa, or Taiwan as it's known today. And we did the same thing there. And then, you know, the surrender party hadn't gotten there, but we had no problems whatsoever.
Back on this other island, did the general speak English too?
No.
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 Okay. But he had other people with him who were fluent?
I think everyone that was in that so-called surrender party spoke English.
Mm-hmm. Except the general?
Yeah.
Okay. You spoke about seeing some American parts on boats, suicide boats. What about those?
Well, those were, those little suicide boats were, I always called them an overgrown rowboat, with the engine right in the middle, and the fellow sat in the back and drove it like you would a sled. He had his feet on a deal to work the rudder, you know, just like the old-fashioned sleds. And the warhead went right in the front, and there was only one gear, forward gear, in the darn things, and they'd run like blazes, you know.
Yeah.
And they just ram them into men of war. And
Suicide.
Suicide, strictly suicide. But there was a Chevrolet engine with Chevrolet on the valve cap cover sitting right in the middle of the boat. And
Where did you see this?
they were sunk right along in shallow water, right along a pier at Ishigaki.
So that there was American-made instruments of destruction.
Absolutely. They were throwing their own stuff back at us.
Yeah. Now, this crew of yours, were there any people that you remember especially that, what happened to them after the war?
Well, our navigator was as I say, a little older, maybe 4 or 5 years older than the majority of us. He was a more mature individual as I look back, and had an excellent mind. And he went back, went through graduated from USC, and took a job with Phillips Petroleum Corporation, and in his well, I shouldn't say latter days, it didn't take him too long before he was responsible for all the personal property of Phillips Petroleum. And I imagine that was a pretty responsible position.
Yeah. Any of the other fellows that you kept track of?
Well, our armor gunner worked for and retired from Milwaukee Light and Power.
Anybody else that you kept track of?
The bombardier worked for Kodak in Rochester before the war, and he returned to that job, and then I've lost contract.
Do you remember the names of any of these fellows?
Oh, yeah.
Who was the navigator, for example?
Roy Broberg.
How do you spell that?
Broberg.
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 It's a Swedish name.
Yeah, big Swede.
All right. What about your co-pilot?
Flew with a lot of them. I flew with Joe Hedges, who was, for a while, who was a Crawfordsville resident.
Joe Hedges.
Joe Hedges. Of course, Joe's been dead now 20 years.
Did he come back here after the war?
He came back, and he went back too long, and he's been dead more than 20 years. He wasn't back too long before he died.
Yeah.
Roger Callahan was a radio operator. Ralph Chapman, the ball gunner. Callahan. Well, it's been a long while.
What were how many commissioned officers were on board on a crew?
4.
Okay, and the rest were enlisted.
Right.
Did you, from what you said then, that from time to time this crew shifted, there were replacements came in?
Well, actually, we were a replacement crew.
Uh-huh.
And quite often, if a crew had a flight and say their co-pilot or their navigator or whomever was sick, why they could draw from us or vice versa, see?
Yeah. Temporarily or?
Just temporarily, but we were actually a fill-in crew. You might just face it. In other words, we flew as a crew quite a bit, but we also filled in a lot.
You'd take a plane up where the pilot wasn't available, something like that?
Right. Just whatever slot needed to be filled, why?
Yeah. Okay, Clint, what happened after the war to you?
I just came home, went to work.
And went to work on a farm.
Right.
Have any children?
3.
And who were they?
Well, I have a daughter married in, she lives just north of Boston, and her husband, was the son of Doc Reynolds at Darlington.
Oh, the veterinarian?
Right.
Uh-huh.
And he has a fairly responsible position with the Nature Conservancy.
Uh-huh.
And then Ward was the next child, was married a little over a year ago, and he was out in Fort Collins, Colorado, and he decided to come back home, so he's on the farm now, as with our youngest unmarried son, ZK.
And so you got 2 of them on the farm with you.
Right.
All right. Are you still working on the farm?
I still getting away, yeah.
Yeah.
Still fly a little bit. Got a couple airplanes.
Have you really?
Yeah, World War II.
World War II plane?
Oh, yeah.
Where do you keep them?
Yeah, I've got 1 out at Carlsville Airport and 2 at home.
And what are these planes?
They're exactly like, they're PT-19s, exactly like Uncle Sam tried to teach me to fly in, open cockpit. And then we've got a BT-13, which was the next stage in our training.
And then what's the third one?
I've got 2 PT-19s and then the BT.
Oh, okay. Well, now what do you do with these planes?
Fly them.
Just for
Pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah.
You really can't go very great distance with an open cockpit.
Well, in summertime.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Where'd you get these planes?
Well, I got one.
Surplus?
No. That market dried up many years ago.
Did it?
Yeah. One was at Monticello, Indiana, and I got the other PT a year to the day in Monticello, Kentucky. Just happens to dance.
You went out and bought them.
Yeah.
Do you maintain them yourself?
I do what I can do, and then I have an A&P. You know, you have to have an annual every year.
Yeah.
And, you know, some work that I do, why he looks over my shoulder, and that's the way it's accomplished.
Are these two-seaters or four-seaters?
Two.
Two-seaters, all?
Tandem, all two.
All,
Trainers.
All three of them?
Yeah. Front and back are the same.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. You take part in any shows with them?
Yeah, I like to. I like to.
Really?
Yeah.
Where do you go with the shows?
Oh, I've gone to Jackson, Tennessee, and all over the state, and Illinois, into Ohio.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. I think that's about winds it up, Clint. We're sure did a good job.
Well, I
Glad
think
you were able to come down. I thought when I was talking, I didn't know whether you were going to show up or not.
I had to pull your leg a little bit.